Hollywood pirates swagger across spotless decks, swords flashing, shouting about treasure and freedom. The reality? Pirates spent their lives ankle-deep in filth, elbow-deep in blood, and sometimes face-to-face with rats gnawing at their food and their toes. The so-called golden age of piracy was less about gold and far more about sewage, rotting meat, and endless misery. These weren't occasional hardships. They were everyday nightmares that kept ships running. Every pirate who raised a Jolly Roger understood the trade-off. Freedom on the open seas came with jobs that were as disgusting as they were dangerous. Every morning brought the same ritual of disgust. Pirates, armed with buckets of seawater and blocks of sandstone, crawled across deck planks on their hands and knees. Holy stones, abrasive blocks nicknamed for the praying position required to use them, scraped away the accumulated grime of life at sea. The previous day's mess awaited them: spilled food, bodily waste, and slime from hundreds of unwashed men crammed into tight quarters. Animals kept for food, chickens, goats, pigs, added their own contributions to the deck's coating of filth. Without daily scrubbing, the wooden planks became dangerously slippery and, far worse, breeding grounds for disease. Naval fleets had learned this lesson through catastrophic death tolls. Filthy ships killed thousands of sailors through outbreaks that spread like wildfire. Pirates, despite their reputation for lawlessness, understood survival basics. A clean deck meant a living crew. The work was monotonous torture. Teams of junior crew members ground sandstone along wood grain while salt water sloshed around their knees. They sang shanties to maintain rhythm, voices echoing across empty ocean as they flogged decks dry with rope bundles. The salt ate at their hands, the sun baked their backs, but it kept them alive. This daily drudgery earned no glory. No songs celebrated the swabbing crews who prevented plague from consuming entire ships. Yet every pirate owed his life to these nameless sailors who chose tedium over pestilence. Battle transformed this routine chore into nightmare duty. Combat left decks painted red with blood and littered with human remains. Brain matter clung to railings. Severed limbs rolled with the ship's motion. Someone had to clean it up. Pirates dashed buckets of seawater across blood-soaked planks, while the iron smell of death filled their nostrils. Sand sprinkled across slick boards gave footing during fights, but left a muddy paste to scrub away after. Sticky bloodstains required hours of scraping from seams. Teeth and fingers got swept overboard along with gore. The psychological toll was immense. Crews could lose heart at the sight of their ship transformed into a slaughterhouse. Swabbing parties restored not just cleanliness, but morale, turning scenes of carnage back into workable space. They did it because they had to. No pirate could endure living surrounded by reminders of mortality. The ship's lowest compartment held horrors no pirate wanted to confront. The bilge collected everything that seeped, spilled, or fell through cracks in the deck above. Stagnant seawater mixed with food scraps, dead marine life, and human waste to create a soup that could make hardened sailors vomit. Ships leaked. Even well-built vessels took on water through dozens of tiny gaps in their hulls. This water had nowhere to go but down, settling in the bilge where it festered for weeks. With only primitive toilets for large crews, many sailors used the bilge as a latrine. The result was a toxic stew that threatened to poison or sink the ship. Manning the bilge pumps was punishment duty. Officers assigned it to misbehaving sailors or new crew members who lacked seniority to refuse. These unfortunates descended into the ship's belly carrying lanterns and hand pumps. The air was thick with methane and sulfurous gases that could cause dizziness or worse. The work was backbreaking. Pirates stood ankle-deep in reeking water, working pump handles for hours while the ship pitched around them. During storms, they pumped continuously to keep incoming water from overwhelming the bilge. Failure meant the ship would founder. The environment was deadly. Open flames from lanterns posed explosion risks around accumulated gases. The space was cramped and completely dark except for the flickering light. New crew members, sometimes boys barely into their teens, had to muscle heavy pumps while breathing fumes that burned their throats and lungs. Bilge rat became pirate slang for the most worthless creatures on Earth. The insult captured the degradation of the job and the status of those forced to do it. Real rats skulked in the bilge's depths, sick and desperate creatures that even other rats avoided. Yet experienced sailors took strange comfort in a truly stinking bilge. The smell indicated water had been sitting long enough to rot, which meant the hull wasn't taking on fresh seawater quickly. Disgusting, but oddly reassuring. Foul or not, the bilge had to be controlled, and pirates bore this responsibility with nothing but buckets and grit. Rats ruled the lower decks with an iron paw. They bred rapidly in ship holds, feasting on grain and flour while gnawing through rope and wood. Pirates shared their floating homes with thousands of rodents that contaminated food stores and spread disease through bites and droppings. The rat population exploded during long voyages. Female rats could produce litters every month, and ship holds provided perfect breeding conditions: dark, warm, and full of food. Soon the rodents grew bold, scurrying over sleeping sailors' blankets and biting exposed toes and ears. They were territorial creatures that fought back when cornered. Regular rat hunts were essential, but despised. Pirates armed with clubs and knives crawled into holds, swinging at every squeak and shadow. The rats bit back viciously, and their fleas jumped onto the human hunters. The job fell to rotating crews who cursed their luck while clubbing rodents in cramped, dark spaces. One Spanish treasure galleon managed to kill over 4,000 rats during a single voyage. That number shows how completely overrun ships could become. After mass killings, dead rats were heaped up and thrown overboard, often to the relief of any ship's cat who couldn't keep pace with the rodent explosion. Pirates celebrated when they could force captured sailors to do rat duty instead. The work was so loathed that making enemies handle it felt like poetic justice. Merchant crews pressed into rat hunting, while pirates watched, became a form of psychological torture. Desperation sometimes blurred the lines between pest and food. When supplies ran dangerously low, some pirates resorted to eating their tormentors. Roasted rat became emergency rations when the alternative was starvation. Bilge rat carried darkly literal meaning. Many pirates did eat the animals to survive. The rats carried more than just disease. They symbolized the constant threat of famine that haunted every voyage. A ship's stores could feed a crew for months, or a rat population for weeks. Pirates who managed to hold the line against these four-legged competitors lived to fight another day. If you thought the deck and bilge were bad, wait until you peeked into the galley. The ship's cook had the unenviable job of transforming spoiled rations into meals. Fresh food disappeared within days of leaving port, leaving behind hardtack biscuits and salted meat that carried more bugs than flavor. Hardtack was basically a brick masquerading as food. It was baked until nearly indestructible, but indestructible didn't mean bug-proof. Weevils burrowed into biscuits, hatching into little wriggling surprises in every bite. Pirates nicknamed them worm castles, or joked about bread with meat when maggots wiggled across their plates. Many just ate them anyway. Protein was protein. Salted meat carried its own nightmares. Barrels leaked, meat rotted, and when opened, maggots spilled out like something from a horror film. The smell alone was enough to make men gag. But the cook boiled it all into stews called lobscouse. Long cooking softened the meat, killed some vermin, and masked the worst of the decay. But it didn't erase the crunch of weevils between your teeth. Water was no relief. Stored in wooden barrels, it turned green with algae and reeked after weeks at sea. Drink it, and you'd likely spend the night bent over vomiting. Pirates mixed it with rum to create grog, hoping the alcohol would kill off some of the bacteria. It didn't make it fresh, but at least it made it drinkable, sort of. The cook worked in unbearable heat over open fires, swatting away rats and scraping bugs out of stews. Complaints were constant, and when food poisoning swept through the crew, he became an easy target for anger. Pirates hunched over buckets, praying their insides would stop rebelling, but had no choice. You ate what you were given, or you starved. When battle erupted, the most dangerous job often fell to the youngest on board. Powder monkeys, boys as young as 10, carried bags of gunpowder from the ship's magazine to the cannons. They had to sprint through chaos with explosives clutched to their chests, dodging musket fire and flying splinters. The magazine itself was a death trap. Gunpowder barrels lined the walls, and even a stray spark could turn it into an instant inferno. Boys filled canvas bags carefully, then dashed up ladders into smoke-filled decks where cannons boomed and shrapnel whirled. Marksmen deliberately targeted them, knowing that cutting off powder meant silencing the ship's guns. The risks were endless. A direct hit could incinerate a powder monkey in seconds. Cannon recoil crushed boys against walls. Splinters sliced through them like knives. Even near misses knocked them sprawling, scattering powder across decks already filled with fire. Despite the terror, ships depended on them. A skilled powder monkey kept cannons firing in rhythm, which could mean the difference between victory and destruction. But behind every dramatic cannon shot you've seen in movies, picture a terrified child sprinting with a bomb in his arms. That was reality. Adult pirates manning the cannons faced their own version of hell. Each great gun required a team of 4 to 6 men who loaded, fired, and maintained weapons that weighed over a ton. Movies show the dramatic boom and flash, but rarely the human cost. The noise alone was devastating. A single cannon blast could burst eardrums and leave sailors permanently deaf. Broadsides, multiple guns firing simultaneously, created concussive waves that left crews bleeding from their ears and concussed. Many ended battles with hearing damage that never healed. Thick smoke filled gun decks after the first few rounds. The air turned acrid with burned powder that made eyes water and lungs choke. Visibility dropped to near zero, forcing gunners to work by feel in conditions that stung every membrane in their bodies. Each shot began a dangerous dance with death. Gun crews had to swab cannon barrels with wet sponges on long staffs to extinguish any smouldering embers inside. Failing to clear even tiny sparks could cause the next powder charge to ignite prematurely, exploding in the crew's faces. The sponger risked burns while jamming his tool into hot metal. Loading required handling gunpowder around flying sparks and open flames. Pirates poured charges from powder horns while metal fragments and burning debris filled the air around them. Accidental ignitions killed entire crews when overheated cannons exploded from being reloaded too quickly. The cannons themselves were deadly beyond their intended use. Recoil sent ton-weight guns lurching backward with tremendous force. Crews used ropes and tackles to control this motion, but snapped lines could send cannons careening across decks like massive bowling balls. Pirates had arms and legs crushed or were run over by loose cannons that broke free. Enemy fire added another layer of horror. Incoming rounds sent wood splinters slicing through gun crews like shrapnel. Chain shot, 2 cannonballs linked by chain, could scythe through multiple men at once. Gunners had to keep working while musket balls and cannonballs smashed their shipmates around them. The gun deck after battle resembled a slaughterhouse. Blood pooled on planks, made slippery with gore. Smoke hid carnage that might break survivors' spirits. Bodies and body parts littered the space around dismounted cannons. Survivors had to keep firing as long as they could stand. Pirates sometimes loaded their cannons with scrap metal, nails, broken bottles, musket balls, turning guns into giant shotguns. This improvised grape shot was devastating at close range, but filled the air with debris that could rebound and wound the gun crews firing it. If you survived battle, chances are you'd end up in the surgeon's corner, a place that made battle look merciful. Surgeons, often captured against their will, had the tools of butchers and the speed of executioners. Their patients stayed conscious through amputations, gripping leather straps while knives carved into muscle and bone. Antibiotics didn't exist, so speed mattered more than precision. A skilled surgeon could saw off a limb in 2 minutes flat. After that, a red-hot iron was pressed to the wound to stop bleeding. The smell of burning flesh filled the air as men screamed, sometimes passing out from the pain. Many who survived the cut died later from infection. When no surgeon was available, the job fell to whoever had steady hands. Carpenters, used to sawing wood, or cooks, handy with knives, were pressed into service. The line between carving dinner and carving a leg wasn't as wide as you'd hope. Sterilization wasn't a thought. Instruments were wiped on aprons and reused. Bandages came from old rags. The sick bay reeked of blood, pus, and death. And yet, pirates valued surgeons so highly they offered them better pay and privileges. After all, even a slim chance of survival was better than none. Dental work wasn't kinder. Rotten teeth were yanked from scurvy, softened gums without anesthetic. Pirates bled, screamed, and sometimes fainted, but the work continued. The line between medical care and torture blurred completely. Every few months, Ships needed careening, hauling onto their sides for cleaning and repair. It was exhausting, filthy and strategically dangerous. Pirates searched for hidden coves where they could drag their ships ashore without getting ambushed. First, they unloaded everything: cannons, sails, food, barrels. Then came the muscle work. Crews hauled on ropes tied to mastheads, straining to pull ships onto their sides as tides receded. Fingers got crushed, ropes snapped, and injuries piled up. And that was just to get the ship tipped over. Scraping the hull was worse. Barnacles and seaweed clung like cement, slowing ships to a crawl. Pirates lay belly down in sand or balanced on makeshift scaffolds, chiseling growth off slimy planks under blistering sun. Shipworms bored holes through wood, forcing men to dig them out and patch with tar. Without constant maintenance, ships rotted and sank. Handling tar was its own hazard. Heated in cauldrons, it burned skin and filled the air with choking fumes. Pirates slathered it across planks to keep shipworms at bay, risking severe burns with every splash. Meanwhile, the crew knew they were sitting ducks. A careened ship was helpless if an enemy stumbled on their cove. Sometimes, captured crews were forced to do the work, labouring for weeks under pirate orders. For them, careening was both punishment and torture. For pirates, it was survival, purchased with sweat and danger. The golden age of piracy built its legend on the foundations of human waste and rotting meat. Every treasure seized and every merchant prize taken required crews who could survive in conditions that would break modern sailors within days. Pirates didn't choose their disgusting duties. They were the price of freedom on ships that leaked, crawled with vermin, and demanded constant labour to stay afloat. These jobs shaped pirate culture in ways no movie captures. The Brotherhood of Buccaneers was forged by shared misery as much as shared adventure. Men who could scrub brains off deck planks together or hold each other down for bone-sore amputations developed bonds that went beyond ordinary friendship. They were survival partnerships, tested by circumstances too extreme for comfortable modern imagination. The real treasure of piracy wasn't gold or silver, but simply making it through another day. Pirates who lived to spend their plunder were the ones tough enough to pump bilge water, skilled enough to work aloft in storms, and lucky enough to avoid the countless ways ship life could kill them. Their freedom came at a cost measured in filth, blood, and constant brushes with death. Price Hollywood has never been willing to show.